Hey, ballerina. How you doing, pal? Hey, Eli. There's the sponsor of tonight's live, Eli. Everybody thank Eli. Hey, PT. Hey, Anthony. Hey, Hobo. Hey, Nightshade. Lame. Hobo. PH. Hey, Jay. Hey, Nicola. Hey, Roland. So just while people are coming in here, let me highlight, Eli is the sponsor of tonight's live. This was a great week. We had a live sponsor every night, starting with Richard Van Scooter, Arn B, and Leo Ring, and now, and then Dark Irish, right? Fitz was the sponsor of last night's live. Eli is the sponsor tonight, and Ballerina is the sponsor for tomorrow. So we had a live sponsor every day this week. And guys, I can't tell you what a difference that makes in my life. It really makes a big difference. So thank you guys. Thank you all. We have no sponsor for Saturday or next week. So if anybody wants to sponsor a live, the PayPal is in the description. So thank you all. For those of you who are not Patreon members, you know you can join the Patreon for free. And I am working on a series now that if you follow this channel, you might be interested in. You are almost certainly likely to be interested in. Hey, everybody. Welcome Betty Thompson back after a little hiatus there. I hope you're doing well, Betty. Nice to see you. Hey, Aunt. Hey, Richard. Oh, and Cheyenne is here, of course. So, guys, if you haven't, just get a free Patreon membership, right? Like, it does not cost anything. And I'm working on a series over there that I'm really looking for feedback on and input on and assistance with. So if anybody is interested in that sort of thing, I've gotten some great feedback from a number of people, Neil Livingston, Samsa, the list is longer than that, David Keller, and I appreciate it, and I'm looking for more of that. Join the Patreon. It's free. Patreon info in the bio. And the stuff that I'm working on over there, it will never be on TikTok. It just won't be. You can't have intelligent adult discussions when you have to use the word grape for sexual assault. That's not a thing, right? Yeah, we have to be able to discuss these things openly and honestly, and what's really going on in the world. And you just can't do that here. So that's where we'll be. Now, one of the things that's of real interest to me, and I would call it the top story of the day, is that American authorities, in conjunction with Canadian authorities, shut down an AI-run Russian bot farm in the United States. This AI bot farm managed 986 Twitter accounts and created the accounts, created them to appear to be real Americans, right? Very convincing, phony AI-generated accounts, and then provided the content, right? The only operator intervention was to provide the prompts to create and generate the content. That was it. The whole thing was automated. 1,000 accounts on Twitter spreading Russian garbage as if it were true. And to me, the coincidence that that farm was busted the day that I published the video on the Patreon about the threat of AI-generated bot farms is more than coincidence. It is telling of the state of the union, right? Where we're at and what we're really up against. Because we do not understand and we do not appreciate it, and we are not taking the actions required. If we did understand and appreciate the fact that we are at war with Russia, or rather that Russia is at war with us, at the very least in the information space. Fitz, I didn't get from the reporting was very, was a little shallow on details, honestly. And I didn't understand why the Canadians were involved. Like, it wasn't clear to me why it was a joint operation of Canada and the US. So there's more story there. I'm taking a look at it. I'm going to try to put something together, and I'll put it out, hopefully tomorrow. And I'm going to do a follow-up to the one over on the Patreon too. Just because the dovetailing of the legal action with the in your face, this is what they're doing. This is how they're spending $1.9 billion a year on disinformation, intentionally, to try to divide Americans against each other, to eat away at the foundations of our democracy, to install a puppet regime in the form of Donald Trump and his 2025 plan cronies. It's obscene. It's obscene. Oh my God, it was like 33 here today. No air conditioning, no power. The lights just came on right before the live. So it was not a great day for me. I'm not really built for this, I'm more an October kind of guy. If we had power and AC, it would be different. It would be very comfortable in here. Last summer was beautiful, but without power and then no AC. Oof. I showered 3 times today. All right. So we have the U.S. and the Canadian authorities busting a bot farm. Now, look, here's the concern, of course, is that the operator was in control of 1,000 accounts and yet barely had to lift a finger because of the AI. How many of these operators are there in the United States? And then multiply them by 1,000 because each one of them manages 1,000 user accounts. That's a concern. That's a threat to our democracy. All right. So overnight, there were 20 Shaheds and 5 missiles that came in, hitting energy infrastructure in the Rivne area. Is Yana Stepa here? Rivne was hit. It's not a safe country. It's not. Like, nobody should come here as a tourist right now. Okay, so in Rivne, they hit some energy infrastructure. There was a large fire. That fire is under control. Power outages continue, and the local governor reports no casualties. Thank you for the train, whoever that was. Thank you. Odessa was also hit, along with port infrastructure in Odessa was hit. 2 were unalived. 2 people were unalived there. Writing in Naval News, H. Sutton, who is a defense analyst, has reported that satellite images show the first Russian warship to dock at the Ocasio region, Georgia, deep-water port. Now, that Georgia, 20% of Georgia, is currently occupied by Russian forces. That includes the Ocasio region. That region is on the Black Sea, and there is a port there that the Russians are attempting to turn into a naval port, and they've begun that work. They've got cranes in there, they're extending piers, the whole 9 yards. And it appears that the first Russian warship of the Black Sea Fleet has fled Novorossiysk, which is now under constant drone fire from the Ukrainians, right? Has fled Novorossiysk and is now in port in Okazia. Now, there's a number of things about this that are important. Up until now, only a few FSB patrol boats have been there. Nothing, right? No real presence. And even though technically that area is under the control of the Russians, it is still internationally recognized as Georgia. So you put a ship there, can the Ukrainians hit it without drawing Georgia into this war? And then does Georgia of political necessity come in on the side of Russia? That is the question. And that's the problem, PT. Could Sea Babies get to that port? Maybe not. It might be a little beyond the range of the Sea Baby, but there are other drone solutions that the Ukrainians have that could make it. So do they threaten it? Or do they just make Novorossiysk untenable? Drive all the Russian military presence out of Novorossiysk, or even shut down, the private capacity of the port? It's a tough question. It's an interesting one. And it goes to the point that the Russians are not worried about dragging anybody else into their little war. They're happy to do it as long as they're on their side. And I would think that the Russian-backed government that's currently in charge down there would come in on the side of Russia, sorry to say, instead of doing the right thing and taking back the 20% of their territory that the Russians are currently holding and driving them out of the port. That would be a better move, I think. And while getting that protection, right, that ambiguity of being in a Georgian port, though it's controlled by the Russians, what if the Russians start launching Caliber cruise missiles out of ships that are parked there? Now, it's a little confusing to me because I thought the last missile-carrying ship had been sunk in the Black Sea. But it appears that may not be the case. There may be other ships in the Black Sea that may be missile capable. I'm trying to get clarity on that. We're definitely suffering a little cognitive dissonance there. Would the Georgian army say, no, we are not going? I don't know the answer to that. I do not know the answer to that. I don't know what kind of shape the Georgian army is in to make such a declaration. Yeah, the submarines, David Fraser makes the point that there's 3 Kilo class submarines capable of firing missiles. But David, as I understand it, the ship that was used to reload them, right, like to provide them with ammunition, it's a special ship that they could dock under, right? It's kind of like a big platform, and they would dock under that, and then they would drop the missiles into the ship. My understanding is that ship is in dry dock because it was hit by the Ukrainians. And so that they don't have a way to refit those ships at this time. Now, maybe that's not true. Maybe there's a workaround that they're employing, and I'm not aware of it. But I'm certain that is why that particular ship, the oldest serving ship in the Russian Navy, was hit at the time that it was hit. Privet Sammy. Everybody, David Fraser is here from UA Flag Tesla. And last night, this group helped David hit 10,000 followers, right? You hit 10,000 during our show last night. Congratulations, David. Very happy for you. In Poland, the new security agreement with Ukraine calls for the creation of a Foreign Legion branch in Poland of Ukrainians, right? So Ukrainians, maybe that. Now think about it. There's a deep well of these kids. You were 17 when the invasion happened. Your mother insisted that you leave the country, and you are in school now in Poland 2 years later. You are now 19. You want to join the army, you can, but it's hard when you're 19 and you don't have any money to get from Warsaw back to Ukraine. So now you can sign up right there in Poland and join the Ukrainian Foreign Legion in Poland and get your training in Poland, knowing that the Russians aren't going to target your training center because you're getting trained in Poland. So apparently there have already been thousands of young men sign up for this Foreign Legion in Poland, mostly from Germany and Poland. Mostly those that have been, I don't want to say in exile, but a refugee outside of the country. Is it summer in Kyiv? Tony, oh my God, dear God, it was 33 today, dude, with no air, no AC. Look at me. I just took a 20-minute cold shower hoping to cool down my core temperature, right? It's pointless. It's pointless. It's probably 90 degrees in this kitchen. Ugh. Anyway. Narendra Modi, leader of the world's largest democracy, stood on stage and embraced the devil this week. Did not condemn him for his actions, did not condemn him for his genocide, but rather met with him as a friend and a peer, giving legitimacy to the criminal organization that's in the Kremlin. It's obscene. It's obscene. One of the things that Modi did seem to get out of his meeting, it appears that the Kremlin has agreed to void the military contracts and release early any citizen of India that had been shanghaied into the front line. Now, we know that at least 4 Indians have died on the front line. The number is probably much larger. I've seen estimates that it could be as high as 15,000. And there are at least that many Indian citizens missing in Ukraine. And so Modi has gotten the Kremlin's assurance that all remaining Indian nationals will be granted an immediate release from service and can be repatriated back home. We'll see how many of them make it. Now, this is really interesting. You know, we've talked a lot about the Russian frozen assets and how Western governments have been debating, discussing, how are they gonna, what are they gonna, da-da-da-da-da. And the plan so far that's been advanced is to float Ukraine a $50 billion loan and then use the interest payments off the principals to make the interest payments on the loan. That's what's happening, right? Ukraine is being saddled with a $50 billion debt. The interest that accrues on the Russian frozen assets will be used to pay the interest on the loan to Ukraine. And the loan will be backed with the Russian assets. That's the idea. It's not a great deal, but it does get money into Ukraine's hands immediately. Much needed money. Why wasn't the G7 able to come to terms with seizing the principals? It appears that they were blackmailed by Saudi Arabia. Now, look, we know Saudi Arabia supports Russia in this thing. That's what the OPEC production cuts have been about. It's been about holding the world hostage for oil, making sure that oil prices rise so that Putin can fund his war and so that Mohammed bin Salman can fucking tile his roof in gold. That's what it is. So Saudi Arabia further threatened the West with blackmail because, of course, they don't keep their money in Saudi, dinari or something, Saudi, I think dinari. But whatever the Saudi currency is, they don't keep their money in that. They keep their money in euros and dollars, right? Because that's where it's worth something. And the Saudi government threatened to sell its EU and US holdings if the West and the G7 seized the Russian foreign assets. Well, my question is, who believed that bullshit? Because where at dinares, thank you, effing hell. The Saudis are not our friends, Bobby. No, they are not, pal. No, they are not. And here's the evidence. Because they're threatening to sell these assets to whom? And where are you going to put your money? You're going to put your money in Japanese, not, you might put it in Japanese yen, but not Chinese yuan. Certainly not Russian rubles, right? So this could explain one of the reasons why those in the G7 that chose the more conservative course that they did chose it, is because there was this concern that the Saudis would dump dollars and EU into the market, and the market wouldn't be able to handle it. It would be destabilizing to the Western currencies because they got a lot of money, fucking Saudis. Okay. The other big story this week, of course, is the NATO summit. It's the 75th anniversary, and it is telling that 3 generations on, we are back here again, worried about Russian aggression. And we should be worried. Remember, when NATO was founded 75 years ago, what we were looking at was an expansionist USSR that wanted to bring all of Eastern Europe into its sphere of influence. That's what was going on. And here we are, not in a Cold War, but in a hot war, where they are determined to get it all back. And the price of that will be the cost of liberty and freedom to Eastern Europe. It'll be the enslavement of tens of millions of people to the whims of the Kremlin. It'll be genocide on a massive scale. It's obscene. It's obscene. So at the 75th NATO summit, in a briefing last night, a senior NATO official predicted that the war will last well beyond 2025. Now, that was a real disappointment for me to hear. Now, he might be wrong, of course. I'm hopeful that it won't last that long. But that was his take on it. He said that Russia lacks the men and ammo to make any significant progress this year. And that sentiment is being echoed by analysts all up and down the line. Everybody agrees that Russia does not have the men, machines, and ammunition to make any significant progress this year. That Russia requires more ammo than it can get from its combined domestic North Korean and Iranian sources. It's not what they're getting is not enough to dislodge the Ukrainians. The U.S. intelligence assessment has always stated Putin has no interest in life beyond Russia. That statement is a lie. That is a blatant, filthy lie. In order to acquire the means necessary to make any breakthrough, Putin will be forced to order a general mobilization. The current rate of 30,000 new recruits a month is just a stopgap measure against losses. It is not sustainable. At the 75th anniversary dinner, the speech from Biden focused on air defense for Ukraine. Ukraine can, and he said Ukraine can and will stop Russia, and that NATO is stronger than ever. Now, whether or not NATO is stronger than ever, I think the addition of Finland and Sweden, that might make it so. But whether or not NATO is unified is another question. And as a counterpoint to Biden's comments, I would point out that Viktor Orban of Hungary, is at the NATO summit representing Hungary and the EU. And he has just wrapped up his little dictator tour. where he met with Putin and Xi Jinping. I cannot help but ask the question, what kind of messages do you think he communicated between these men? I doubt very much that it was just, I love your jacket. He said something to the effect, this heinous attack, meaning on the children's hospital in Kyiv, is a brutal reminder that the war was always going to go this way. And he says this, he calls it a heinous attack, but then never condemns Putin or the Russians, and in fact seems to conflate responsibility for the attack between the Russians and the Ukrainians, as if it was somehow equally both their problem, both their fault. So Orban is clearly trying to position himself as a peacemaker, as the person who can get a deal between Putin and the West. And at the same time, he's selling out all of the things that NATO is supposed to stand for. It's obscene. Jens Stoltenberg, who's on his way out as the head of the organization, gave another one of his impassioned and intelligent speeches. He said that NATO has provided unprecedented support to Ukraine. And that's probably accurate. There are no risk-free options with an aggressive Russian neighbor who cannot be allowed to win. That's a direct quote from Stoltenberg, and I thought that was a good summary. A good summary. I did not see his interview on Welt, no. Of the 32 allies, 23 of them are spending the base 2% minimum GDP on defense. With the UK unveiling plans to go to 3%, and pushing the notion that the 2% of GDP spending on defense is the floor. It's the bottom that any NATO member should be doing. And it should likely be more than that. The final statement from the 75th NATO anniversary meeting on the subject of Ukraine joining NATO was that Ukraine's membership in NATO was irreversible and inevitable. Now, I hope that that's true. I certainly hope that that's true. But that was the statement that the 32 NATO leaders agreed to yesterday, or earlier today. There has been more clampdown inside of Russia. Russia has issued an arrest warrant for Navalny, Alexei Navalny's widow. And she called the arrest warrant outrageous, and that Putin should be the one in jail. Now, this is something that's very near and dear to my heart in particular. And it's definitely one of the kind of motivating factors of my life. A playwright and a director have been sentenced to 6 years in prison for a play, for doing a play. This happened, of course, in Russia. The play was actually purportedly to be an terrorist play, right? To show what not to be in the world. And instead, it was decried as anti-government, seditious, and extremist. And the two ladies, the female director and the female playwright, were each sentenced today, after spending a year in jail awaiting trial, were each sentenced to 6 years in the gulag at hard labor for doing a play. That's our Russia right there. Is there a movement to get NATO involved militarily in Ukraine before the U.S. elections? No. Nobody wants to go to war before the election. Okay, so just before we go to the Q&A, guys, that's the main news for the day. Again, the synchronicity of the feds busting that bot farm, that Russian FSB AI-generated bot farm in the U.S. At the same time that we're talking about that over on the Patreon and how critical it is to understand that that's what's going on, is too much of a dovetailing synchronicity for my taste. It really drives home the point that this is the threat. I want to thank the sponsor of tonight's live, Eli. Thank you, Eli. Could not do it without you. I want to thank all of the moderator crew, best moderator crew on the Tickety Talk, Cheyenne, Vanetta, PT, John Williams, Jay, and Travis. I want to thank Nightshade, who runs the Peter's Peeps group over on the Book of Faces. If you haven't joined us there yet, please do. I want to thank particularly Vanetta Larrett, who manages the Google Doc share, and Lars, who's got the Discord server. So having said all that, we can go to Q&A. Thanks. Thanks for all the likes, guys. Thanks for all the gifts. Really appreciate it. Frickin' Turkey is like the Henry Hill of NATO. Turkey's a problem. There's no two ways about it, but they're having lots of problems, man. They're having lots of problems. Inflation in Turkey is higher than it is in Russia. That's saying something. Hey, Bertus. Did you miss it all? Well, no worries, man, because I am now posting the lives over on YouTube. So we didn't have any power today, and I can't do it without power because it requires the laptop. But I've downloaded yesterday's live and will be publishing it to YouTube very shortly. And then this one I'll probably get up in the morning for me, which will be overnight for you. For those who are interested in supporting this channel, if you don't have any money, it's okay. You can join the Patreon for free. And I really encourage you to do that if you follow this channel. I have just revamped all of the Patreon membership levels. So for anybody that's interested in helping to support this channel, supporting me, you can find all the details over on the Patreon. There is a mosquito in here, and it keeps coming. It keeps approaching. I keep shushing it. Hey, Chef Deb. Did you see where Ukraine boarded a ship in the Black Sea full of contraband wheat stolen from occupied Ukraine? I did, Bobby. I didn't have a chance to get the details on it, just that the ship was interdicted outside of Odessa. The ship is said to be full of Ukrainian wheat. The captain of the ship is being held on charges of helping to assist the Russian occupiers in the theft of Ukrainian grain and the smuggling it out of the port. So I don't know what's going to become of that grain or what's going to become of that ship, but it's the first interdiction of its kind. And it'll be interesting to see if we see more of them. Hungarian opposition leader arrived in Kyiv today, brought ambulance and 300,000 euro for hospital. Herb, today, Orban was here he's in DC at the NATO conference, pal. He arrived here in Kyiv late last week, Friday maybe, and then went on to Moscow, and then on to Oh, the Hungarian opposition leader. Oh, gotcha. The Hungarian opposition leader. Got it. I don't know who that is. Yeehaw. Yeah, my apologies. I was not aware of that. I was not aware of the Hungarian opposition leader being in town. Magyar. Hey, Hayden. Is Magyar the name of the Hungarian opposition leader? Because of course it's also the name of the most famous drone brigade here. That guy has Hungarian background though. Drove by cars from Budapest to Kyiv. That's a drive I'd like to do sometime. Hey, Chili Peppers. Thanks, David. I'm in Kyiv. Yes. Password funny. I hope your password's not really funny. I mean, that would not be good. Hey, Road Rat, how you living? Why are you there? Well, that's a long story, but right now it's because I spend all my time trying to communicate to my fellow Americans why the defense of Ukraine is so important. And being here, being able to talk to Ukrainians, being on the ground during air raid alerts and missile attacks and such, lends a veracity to and a weight to the things that I say because I'm here. And so being here, I try to make the most of it and try to communicate to all of you what's really going on over here and why it's so important that we give a fuck. David, don't do that, man. Everybody knows I have no dental insurance, so I can't be CIA. I mean, what I would not give for the CIA dental plan, right? Please, CIA, if you're listening, hello. I am definitely looking for a job. Yes, please, dear God. If I didn't have to beg on TikTok, life would be a lot better. Why is Hungary still in NATO? You know what? I think we should all be glad when the government doesn't function that well. Because you know what kind of governments function really fast and get shit done real fast and quick? Dictatorships, the worst of the worst. That's who. So I think we should kind of be glad that things move slowly and that big change doesn't come because big change will wreck everything, as we are seeing with Ukraine and Russia right now. American mosquitoes are different from Ukrainian mosquitoes. I saw in the United States we have an insect called the mosquito hawk, commonly miscalled the Jersey mosquito. And mosquito hawks, of course, prey on mosquitoes. That's their favorite thing to eat. And I don't see many mosquito hawks in Ukraine, but I did see one the other night. It was on the porch, and I was kind of happy to see it because the mosquitoes have been bad. No, we didn't talk about F-16s because I don't have anything to say. I mean, what am I going to say? I'm going to, for 7 months, I've been repeating the official line. They're going to be here in January. They're going to be here in February. They're going to be here in March. They're going to be here in April. They're going to be here in May. They're going to be here in June. They're going to be here in July. I don't fucking believe it anymore. I mean, I believe they're coming. Eventually they will come. But I've stopped listening. I've tuned out, and I'm sorry. I know that that's a terribly unpopular attitude. Everybody is saying, oh, they're going to be there tomorrow. I don't see it happening. This is one place I would love to be wrong, but there is no evidence to indicate that they're going to be here anytime soon. And anybody who quotes Antony Blinken at me from yesterday can go fuck themselves, because Antony Blinken didn't say a goddamn thing. His words were completely meaningless. They were meant to confuse. No. Hey, Russell Kennedy. And Bertus, I appreciate operational security. I do. I hope that the powers that be are keeping their mouths shut for some good reason and saying what they're saying for some good reason. I'm just saying, after 7 months of believing it every time, I've stopped believing. I mean, I think they'll get here eventually. I wish I knew when. I wish I knew under what circumstances. I definitely do not, and I don't think any of us do. It's extremely slow. I mean, remember we were all hyped because, what's his name? Michael, I'm saying Michael like I know the guy. He's Lieutenant Colonel Michael Lund, I think it is, Lund. He's in charge of the National Guard Air Force training camp in Arizona, where all foreign pilots get trained on fast jets. And so that's where the Ukrainian cadre of pilots was being trained on F-16s. The first group of them graduated in May. We thought they were going to be back here with the birds in the sky in June. And instead, they were all sent to further F-16 training in Romania. We think Romania. We're not even sure that it's Romania. And they did not come home. Runways are a real issue. I'm not saying that they're not. I'm not saying that there aren't a lot of real issues. I'm just tired of repeating propaganda that doesn't come true. If it's intended to throw the Russians off, fine, keep saying it. But I'm not listening to it anymore. And when they're here, they'll be here. Oh, Phoenix, it's not warm. It's disgusting. I mean, and there was no power all day, so no air conditioning. So yeah. Oh, while we're on the subject of planes, Kyiv has politely declined the offer of Gripens at this time. They feel that trying to integrate 2 airframes simultaneously would be problematic. And so they're just going to stick with the F-16s for now. Now, that was a funny announcement to make, because it was my understanding that Sweden had said that Ukraine wouldn't get the Gripens until they were in NATO. So again, there's some double talk there. Fitz, I asked the humidity question last night to a friend of mine when we were at dinner. I said, God, it feels so fucking humid. And she's like, it's not that humid. It's dry. It's dry because it's dry. My nose knows. And so I looked up the humidity. Are you ready for this? It was 65%. It was such an unsatisfying answer, because you couldn't say that it wasn't humid, but you couldn't say that it was. It was 65% humidity. It feels much higher today. I'm as safe as everybody else in Kyiv, Benoy, right? And the difference is, and nobody should feel bad for me, because the difference is I chose to be here. These people did not, right? Like, they didn't have a choice. The war came to them. Hey, Travis. $112 in Phoenix. Yeah, but it's a dry heat. It's a dry heat. Oh my God, look, I'm like so through. Oh my God, it's so gross. Anyway. Ugh. Sammy, I'm sorry, but I'm really getting tired of Europeans correcting my pronunciation of everything. I mean, really, get the fuck out of here. Ugh. No, I'm really, it's getting annoying. You know what the fuck I mean. And no, we do not have the same accent. Get over it. There's 1,000 other people you can tune into. Please, please do. It is not helpful for weight loss. It is only helpful for dehydration. I'm not blocking anybody. I'm not blocking anybody that tells the truth. All right. Time to say goodnight. Again, thank you, Eli, for sponsoring tonight's live. Thank you to the moderator team, Cheyenne, Vanetta, PT, John Williams, Jay, and Travis. And thanks to Nightshade, who runs the Peter's Peeps group over on the Book of Faces. And to Lars, who has the Discord server. All right, thanks, everybody. Make it a great day.